Hey, how's it going, do-it-yourselfers? In this video, I'm going to show you how you can diagnose and fix problems with your car's AC compressor. Whether you're having problems with your AC compressor clutch, your AC compressor pulley and bearing, or your AC compressor coil, today I'm going to show you how you can test and replace all of them. Alright, so first we'll start with the AC compressor clutch coil. Alright, so if you want to test your coil, what you'll need first is a 12-volt power supply. Next, you want to remove the connector that goes to your compressor, and then if you got two wires, you want to make sure which one is which. On this one, black one is going to be ground and the white is going to be our voltage. Now if your AC compressor only has one wire going to it instead of two, that means that one wire is where you're going to get your 12 volts. And that your compressor is grounded through the body of the compressor through your engine. So you want to get yourself some jumper cables and attach it to the compressor and then to the negative side of your battery if you're bench testing this. And next, when we make our connections, we should see the AC compressor clutch engage. Here's a closer shot. And now with this engaged, when I turn the pulley, the clutch turns with the pulley. And when it's disengaged, only the pulley turns. Alright, next let's cover some clutch and bearing problems. So what you want to do is to remove your belt and then play with the clutch. Make sure there's no excessive play or noise, and it's not loose. Then what you want to do is to spin your pulley and listen to the bearing that's inside there. If you hear any rumbling or any kind of noise or play from the pulley, then that could indicate a problem with the bearing that's inside this pulley, and that means you need to replace it. Now, good news is if you need to replace the clutch, the bearing, the pulley, or the coil for your AC compressor, you don't need to replace your AC compressor. You can just purchase those parts separately and remove and replace them as I'm about to show you. And even better news is that you don't need to evacuate your AC system. You can just leave the lines attached to your AC compressor. But if you don't have enough room in front of your AC compressor to work on these, you can just unmount your AC compressor, which is going to be usually attached to a bracket or your engine by 4 bolts, and then just slightly move it around with the AC lines still attached to it. As long as you don't pull on this really hard or pry against these lines, you're not going to have a problem. You can just undo these bolts and move this to a place where you have some room that you can work on your AC compressor clutch and pulley. Alright, first step is to remove this bolt. Now an impact gun would easily take this out, but usually you can remove it with a solid ratchet and a socket as well if you do this. Basically put your ratchet on here and then hold it in with one finger, then get a hammer and give it a good solid whack. Like that. You might have to do this a couple times, but it usually comes loose after a couple of tries. There. Alright, next we're going to remove our clutch just by pulling on it, but be careful as you're pulling this out because there's going to be spacers between your clutch and the shaft for your AC compressor that you don't want to lose. And as long as you go nice and slow, you can usually see the spacers and save them. And here's a look at our clutch, and I don't know if you guys can tell, but there's a spacer right in there. There it is. We just got one for this one, but sometimes there's a bunch of them and they're a lot thinner than this, so make sure you don't lose them. Alright, here's a look at our compressor pulley. There's a bearing inside of this, and this is a contact surface. This is a contact surface where it engages our clutch. Alright, now in order to remove this pulley, first we need to remove this snap ring. Alright, so go ahead and grab your snap ring pliers. And then removing these is usually pretty straightforward, like this. Alright, next, if you're lucky, you can just pull on this pulley and it will slide off the compressor, but generally speaking, you're usually not going to be that lucky. So what you want to do next is to grab yourself some penetrating fluid and spray it all around here. Next, if you have enough swing room, you can get a rubber mallet and then hit the back of the pulley. And just hit it a couple times, turn it, hit it a couple times, turn it. That way it comes out evenly and it doesn't bind inside here. And if that doesn't work, you can just rent yourself or buy a 2 or 3 jaw puller. And this way you can put this around the pulley, and then you would screw this in, and that's going to pull this pulley and remove it. But I believe I can remove this pulley with just a rubber mallet. There we go. Alright, so here's a look at our pulley, and here's our bearing. So this is our compressor bearing. That's inside here. Now if you have a bad bearing and need to replace it, replacing this is very easy. You just get a socket, put it on top of here on this end, then you use a hammer to knock out this bearing, and then when you get your new bearing, you put it on this end, But you're going to need another socket that's the circumference of the outer lip of the bearing. That way you're pressing on the outer lip of the bearing when you're hammering it. Because if you press on the inner lip or on the center piece, you could damage the bearing. So you need a socket that's exactly the circumference of the outer lip of the bearing. And then you can just hammer that in, and it usually goes in without much fuss at all. And that's pretty much it. Also, if the auto parts store cannot find you a bearing for whatever reason for your air compressor, you can just go try to find one off the numbers that are on these bearings. Alright, and here's a look at our stator or our coil for our AC compressor clutch. And there you can see the two wires that go to it from this connector. And this is basically held in by another snap ring that's inside here. Alright, once again, with everything out and about, it's going to be easier to show you how this works again. So again, the coil is going to be inside your pulley. It's going to ride very close to the pulley without touching it, okay? So this pulley is sitting in like this, all the way in. I'm not going to be able to get it in all the way in right now, but you guys get the picture. That coil is inside here, and then when that becomes activated, it creates a magnetic field that pulls on your clutch, which is riding out here. Now your clutch is what's connected to the shaft of your air compressor, and that's the one that turns with the shaft. So when this becomes activated, it pulls on this clutch and connects it to your pulley. Then these two turn together, and then therefore turn the shaft that's inside your AC compressor. Alright, now before we remove our coil, we're going to disconnect this connector from its bracket. Usually takes some fiddling around. So again, we grab our snap ring pliers and get it out of there. There we go. Now we should be able to pull this out easily. There. Now putting everything back together should be just a reversal of removal, but you want to pay special attention to a couple of things. On this coil, for example, if you get a new one, make sure you line this pin up with this hole here. Otherwise, this is not going to go in even. So when you get the new one, make sure it's sitting nice and flat against the compressor, and that pin is lined up with that hole. Also, if there's any sign of rust or corrosion on any of these snap rings, make sure you replace it. You don't want these to break and come loose sometime in the future. Also, at the end, when it's time to install this bolt that attaches your clutch to your compressor, make sure you use some blue thread locker on this. And you can tighten it using the hammer method, but make sure you do it a couple times and make sure it's nice and tight when you put it on the compressor. And last but not least, don't forget the little spacer that goes inside your clutch. Now this spacer again creates a specific amount of space between your clutch and the pulley, and it's important to check that space after you call this repair finished. Now this video was more of a general video on how your compressor works and how you can diagnose problems with all the different components, but if you want a more detailed, more specific video on how you can diagnose problems and replace the clutch and the bearing and the pulley, I put a link to a video I did about a year and a half ago on this side of the screen. Also put some other links to some related videos that you might find interesting, and I recommend you check them out. But if you like this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more like it, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.